there's all these stories about, guys over in Macedonia who are running these fake news sites.
Number 24 is Content Farms in Macedonia.
Бидејќи ако се направи грешка, таа ќе биде кобна. Нема враќање назад.
So Europe need to remain more sexy lady in the world. Ajde, majkata!
Господа ја чува Македонија и низините граѓани.
The so-called, quote, ethnic balancer, unquote, is ruled unconstitutional by Macedonia's constitutional court. This means, wait for it, this means that the ethnicity of public sector employees cannot be considered when they apply for employment. This might mean, hopefully, that folks are hired on, merit. Their abilities and talent and that they can do the job they were hired to do. But no, Vlen, the ethnic Albanian coalition partner in government, wants some sort of law to address ethnicity because, hey, the Vlen leadership doesn't believe Albanians have any talent or merit and so must be hired on the basis of their ethnicity. This is called the soft bigotry of low expectations to describe this type of behavior. In other news, Albania has officially been separated from Macedonia in the opening of EU accession talks because of Bulgaria. Speaking of which, Bulgaria will hold, checks notes, their sixth round of parliamentary elections since 2021 this weekend because, they can't seem to be able to form a stable government for their own citizens, and yet they want to dictate to Macedonia and the Macedonians what is in the Macedonian constitution. As Jesus said in the New Testament book of Matthew, quote, "Why do you see the speck that is in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log that is in your own eye? Or how can you say to your brother, let me take the speck out of your eye, when there is a log in your own eye? You hypocrite! First take the log out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to take the speck out of your brother's eye," unquote. We'll discuss all this and more on this episode of the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. I'm Jason Miko, coming to you from the foot of the Catalina Mountains in Oro Valley, Arizona.
And this is Cvetin in Skopje, Macedonia.
How you doing, Cvetin?
Good. Looking, following Macedonian events, but mainly, I guess, preparing for the big event with your elections coming up.
Less than 2 weeks from today. This is episode 181 of the Macedonian Content Farmers Podcast. We are recording this. It's morning my time on the, what is today, the 24th? Thursday?
Yeah.
Okay. So afternoon of the 25th. So yes, we got less than 2 weeks. We got, 12 days, 13 days left to the elections. Let's, we could do a whole podcast on that, but let's do this. Let's leave that for the end for those that don't want to hear anything about American politics, and we'll kind of start with these. It's been a while. It's been over a month since we've talked. I can't believe it.
We really let ourselves go.
Yeah, we're busy people, man. We don't, and this job doesn't pay enough for us to, make sure that we do this on a regular basis. So, but there've been a couple of things that happened between now and when we last talked in September. I don't know if this is the order, but anyway, we'll go on at the order that I mentioned in the monologue. So this quote unquote ethnic balancer, this is akin to, for American, maybe North American listeners and others, affirmative action, whereby here, the color of your skin is taken into account when hired in the public sector, usually always in the public sector, sometimes in the private sector too. But the ethnic balancer is basically the same thing, not on the color of your skin, but on the ethnicity that's in your heart, I suppose, or your genes. And this has been around, I don't know how many years it's been around, but it was ruled unconstitutional. Of course, Ali Ahmeti is having an absolute fit, saying that, you have to have a certain number of Albanians hired by ethnicity. And of course, the Albanians always seem to forget that there's other ethnicities besides Macedonians and Albanians, and they sweep the Roma, the Turk, the Torbesh, the Bosniaks, the others all underneath the table. The Bulgarians, all 900 of them, when talking about ethnicity. So, but Vlen, so the ethnic Albanian coalition partner in the government with Vumro, wants some sort of a law actually to address this, because they still believe, in my opinion, that people should be hired on the basis of ethnicity. Because, as I said in the monologue, they don't believe that. Apparently, they don't believe that ethnic Albanians have any talent or merit. It is. I love this phrase: the soft bigotry of low expectations.
Yeah.
So where are we standing now with this idea of a new law put forward by Vlen?
Yeah, well, for starters, it's part of the constitution that we need to have an equitable representation of all different minorities, ethnic groups in the public administration. So that part of the deal, which the Albanians carved for themselves after the 2001 civil war, is safe. And then the balancer, as it's called, it's basically like an Excel spreadsheet which was used whenever there is a public administration unit and they would need to hire somebody. They would put in the numbers of current employees, their current ethnic orientation, which is pretty flexible in this country, almost as flexible as the sexual orientation in your country. And they would type them up, compare it to the census, to the last census that was conducted, and they would say, okay, we need to hire 2 Macedonians, 1 Albanian, and 1 Roma, for example. And then we would have people like switch ethnic orientation depending on what job opening they're applying to. So you would have a person with a clearly Macedonian first and last name representing himself as a Albanian or a Roma. You would have Albanians, clearly Albanians, declaring they're Macedonians. Even before the elections, we even had the New York Times come over and do a report on this travesty of a law. Or it's not even a law, it's practically an administrative tool outlining all the problems that were happening during hiring and all the abuses that were going on. So now it was, because it would be too much to strike it down through parliamentary action, because the Albanian coalition partner, Vlen, would object, obviously, because for them it's a tool to get more Albanians hired, especially after the falsified census that was conducted during COVID, which showed which counted the Albanian diaspora in large numbers, while I think about 150,000 Macedonians boycotted the census, partly because of the COVID, partly because they detested Zaev. So the numbers are pretty invalid, but they're applicable when hiring. So instead of going through parliament, which would have been difficult, it was struck down by the constitutional court because, as you said, it disregards the principle of merit, and it's obviously unconstitutional as a bylaw.
Right.
So now we cannot implement it anymore. Many have said in the past that once we have reached a sufficient number of Albanians in the government, in the public administration, and I think we have, by and large, to reach their fair share of population, that we should actually drop this altogether, because we are assuming there are sufficient number of managers who are Albanian who would, prevent any discrimination against them. So practically, the tool has been, rejected, has been cancelled. And of course, Vlen says, listen, they don't want to lose face before the Albanian voters and before the DUI party. So they're saying, listen, we are going to fix this by a stronger mechanism which will be passed through law, through parliament. But so far, I don't see Vemera in a big hurry to adopt this law. They said whatever law Vlen proposes, we will have to take it through the European Commission, the Venice Commission. We need to make sure it's constitutional. So there's going to be a process to restore this mechanism.
So where does this sit in terms of a timeline?
It can be very open-ended, especially as we had a prime minister Albanian under his DSM. We had most of the government was made up of Albanians, so you can't say that there is any more discrimination at high level, which means that it's percolating down to the middle and lower levels. But this has given DUI a very strong rallying cry in their plan to organize protests. So DUI is preparing something big for November. Now, is it 22nd or 29th? There are two holidays which Albanians celebrate. One is their Independence Day for Albania. Yeah, one is the Flag Day. I think they're similar. No, sorry, one is the Independence Day / Flag Day. The other is the Alphabet Day. So DUI is planning to organize large protests in a month from now. And they will be using the fact that their mechanism for hiring Albanians in the public sector has been quashed. And they're saying that this means that the current Albanian coalition is weak, the current Albanian coalition partner is feckless, so they will say that they're using this to drive up their supporters, to take them to protests, which they still haven't held any actual protests, but they're planning for a month from now.
Well, this, I go back, and I know we've talked about this before on this podcast, and comparing it to, say, African Americans here in the United States. Where are the Tom Sewells, the conservative economist, black, the Tim Scotts, the conservative senator from South Carolina, the Clarence Thomases, the conservative justice of the Supreme Court? Where are these people in the ethnic Albanian population of Macedonia who will rise up and say, stop treating us like children. Stop with your soft bigotry of low expectations. Stop with the condescension. We are willing and able. We have God-given talent and merit, just like Macedonians, just like Vlach, just like Turks, etc., to do this kind of work. And we want to be hired based on our abilities and our talents and our merits, not because of our ethnicity. So my question is, where are these people in Macedonian society? Do they exist?
We would sometimes get this from DPA, the Albanian party that had a lot of connections with conservative American thinkers, organizers during the Bush period. So they would sometimes say that go beyond just the naked ethnic politics of Macedonians versus Albanians. They would say something like, okay, we need to actually reform the country, clear out the backlog of former communist thinking, including among ethnic Albanians and Albanian officials. But it's really not something you can... by and large, Albanians are more entrepreneurial, more family-oriented, more religious than the Macedonians are. So there is a conservative, undercurrent, very strong conservative undercurrent. But once, these poison fruits of public sector jobs, doing little work for little pay and then maybe abusing your position for graft and corruption is offered, they will take it. Of course, they will take it, and nobody says we don't want this. DPA has, in the meantime, abandoned DUI, I'm sure not for ideological reasons like this, but they are trying to align themselves with the government, I guess, and also we can expect. There are several Turkish members of parliament elected on the DUI ticket, and also much larger coalition partner than DPA. DUI is allied with the Alliance of Albanians, which I think has like 4 seats in parliament. So they are also, doubtful how strong they are committed to staying with DUI. So practically the DUI coalition is kind of breaking up before these planned protests. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. We'll see if they have foreign encouragement to either stick together or break up. Because practically DUI has the support of the establishment American politicians who are also supporting this UÇK military faction in Kosovo, the former UÇK commanders who have ruled the country for so long and had so excellent connections with American diplomats in the region, while Vlen, the current coalition partner for Vmera, they're closer to the populist VV party in Kosovo, which is in open fight with the American diplomats, with much of the EU diplomatic corps. They're like an anti-corruption, like a reform movement. They're attacking the old Uçaka Guard on corruption grounds, including Ahmeti, but they lack the international support, which is important for Albanians. Right. So this will determine what happens, who will come on top, whether Vlen stays with Vmera in power, or maybe Vmera will have to, if Vlen, for example, loses the local elections badly in spring, and Dewey wins, then it will be difficult for Vlen to remain in coalition.
Yeah, well, between now and spring is like a decade. It feels like in terms of everything else that's going on in the world. So we'll tackle that when we get there. Okay, well that's the ethnic balancer. Now, but then it's, so we were talking there about Dewey and Ali Ahmeti, and of course Ali Ahmeti was seen recently with the Bulgarian ambassador to Macedonia, which probably violates a lot of protocol and things like that. But he's doing it for a reason. He mentioned the protests that Dewey's gonna hold, and it was a 1 day, maybe 2 day story. Albania and Macedonia were officially separated from each other in EU accession talks because the Bulgarians keep insisting that Macedonia change its constitution to include the 900 people in Macedonia that self-identify as Bulgarians, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. And of course the pressure is on Macedonia. Ursula von der Leyen was in Macedonia today, and again it's Thursday, October 24, basically saying the same old thing. I mean, we've seen this story over and over and over again from the EU, from the State Department and others. Bulgaria is in the club, Greece is in the club, Macedonia is not in the club. You have to do what they say, etc. And then we had Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, in Macedonia last week, I think, the week before,
a few weeks ago.
Yeah, offering the good offices. And Hungary is holds the presidency of the rotating, was it EU Council, EU Chair, I forget. You got so many presidents in the European Union.
Yeah.
So, but offering the good offices of the rotating EU chair to mediate, and Bulgaria says no. Now, part of this is because, as I mentioned in the third part of the opening monologue, this weekend they have the 6th round of parliamentary elections since 2021. That's what 2 a year roughly. They just cannot form a stable government. And how do you actually sit down and have a reliable partner to talk to when your reliable partner, quote unquote, is changing every 6 months? It's impossible. Yeah. So now I haven't looked at polls recently for Bulgaria, but I believe Boyko Borisov, Garib they're in the lead, I believe. But I think, what is it, the socialists or the Russians or the pro-Russian Bulgarians are like second or something like that?
No. The second are so the socialists were decimated. They've fallen. They have like a left-wing socialist party which is kind of nationalist. So they're not like this new postmodern style, like the colored revolution leftists of Macedonia style. So they were like more like the old school SDSM in Macedonia. So they were more like they are old communist party style socialists, but they have dropped out of favor in favor of more colored revolution, more urban, more student oriented left-wing party, a more LGBT oriented, more post-national oriented left-wing party, which is PP. We continue to change. Продължаваме промените, of this newly minted two politicians, Petkov and Asen Vasilev was his last name, I think. So they were like, I guess, like US, EU approved, new modern center-left party. And they did well. I think they even won one or two of these numerous elections that were held. But then they formed a broad coalition with Boyko, with the conservative GERB, with Borisov's party. And this dried out support in the public for them. They were seen like more of the same, like, okay, they sold out, they're same like Boyko, they're, the urbanites lost, they were no longer the flavor of the month. So now they dropped in the polls badly, and they would still be second, but far behind Boyko. And then there will be this new nationalist party, Возрождение, which is pro-Russian. So they have like anti-Russian nationalists and pro-Russian nationalists. So it's interesting that, for example, Karakachanov's nationalist party, which largely disappeared, for example, their member of the European Parliament, Angel Jambaski, he's very anti-Russian. So, you have different kinds of nationalist parties there. But the pro-Russian nationalist party, now it's its moment, and they are they may be like third ranked in the elections, possibly even second ranked, I think. And the Turkish party was divided. So there is one faction led by an actual Turk and another faction led by this huge media-owning oligarch who is kind of supporting Borisov, Delyan Peevski, who is not even Turk, he's Bulgarian. And he bought practically this large Turkish party, which usually ranked third in the elections. And he's now controlling one half of the party, and the guy Ahmet Dogan, who is actually Turkish, runs the other half of the party, which was supposed to be like the liberal democratic party of Bulgaria with some international connections, but it's now collapsing and crashing down. So Boyko will win. He should be able to cobble together enough support among other parties to form a government, but whether this will be the some portion of the Turkish party, maybe what's left of the old socialist party, this more national socialist party. I don't know. They're fed up. They're tired. They're expecting very low turnout.
The Bulgarians as a
there
whole,
was an attempt. Yeah, all of them. And the lack of enthusiasm is harming this modern pro-EU, pro-American center-left movement. So while Boyko can still drum up his faithful party soldiers, these guys who count on enthusiasm among urban voters, they cannot. I guess they were trying to, inject some national enthusiasm when President Silyanovska went to visit Bulgaria for an opera performance of the Macedonian opera.
All right.
She met briefly with President Radev, who is like a hardliner on our issue. He's the only legitimate leader in the country, actually elected in actual elections. But he's pretty tough on our issue, on the Macedonian historical issue. So he had her take a picture without the Macedonian flag, just two Bulgarian flags, even though beforehand it was agreed that they will not take a picture there, or at least not distribute the picture. Radev distributed the picture regardless. So then there was a lot of outrage in Macedonia that he snubbed President Silyanovska because he took a picture with her with two Bulgarian flags only, without the Macedonian flag. He wouldn't apologize. He insisted that he's in right by protocol, that this was not an official visit, but it was a pretty ugly scene for a week of arguments between the two countries. And then in the meantime, we have removed the historians from our part of the commission. The government fired all the Macedonian historians in the joint commission. These were the guys who were accepting largely the Bulgarian demands up to the medieval period, and then work stopped. And now we have appointed a new set of historians who will be not so easy to pressure, who will not be accepting the Bulgarian historical narrative as easily. At their meeting, they actually met, I think today, they held their first meeting. I still haven't heard if there is any movement, if something was agreed during this meeting. And Mickovsky is out saying that he's offering like his solution to the problem. He says, just like the Prespa Treaty had a time delay clause, so it says we are changing the name, but we are implementing the new name, let's say in the Interior Ministry records, only after we open the EU accession talks and get to the relevant Interior Ministry, Interior Affairs segment of the accession talks. This was like a guarantee that Greece will not block us in our accession talks. Unfortunately, this treaty had a clause that either, until we open the accession talks or after 5 years have expired. So obviously we didn't open accession talks because of France and then because of Bulgaria. And then 5 years lapsed, and then Zaev was eager to implement the new name even after, even before the 5 years expired. But Mickovsky says, listen, if everybody in the EU, in the US, welcomed the Prespa Treaty, it contained this clause, so let's insert the same clause in the dispute with Bulgaria. We can vote on the constitutional change, but then we'll implement the constitutional change, will include whether it's 900 Bulgarians or 3,000, I think it was in the census, or 120,000, as Bulgaria insists that is the number of passports issued of Macedonian citizens who declared Bulgarian heritage. We'll have them in the constitution, but with this time delay clause only after we have completed accession talks and we're assured that Bulgaria does not have additional new excessive demands. So he's saying, listen, I want to make a deal, but I want this to be the deal.
Right. And those are all perfectly reasonable demands. Obviously, Bulgaria, or to you said France in there, and I just, as you were talking, I just coined a new word, Frangaria. Frangaria is the problem there. Politics is about compromise, and compromise is not always a dirty word. And Bulgaria is so far asking for 100% and getting 100%, and that's again we go back to the same old tired phrases from Ursula von der Leyen and everybody else. They're in the club, you're not in the club. You have to do exactly what they say. Well, that's and again, I've said it before and I'll say it again, and I've written it before and I'll write it again, because of the internal contradictions and internal inconsistencies within the European Union, and this is one of them. The EU is not long for this world if they continue down this road.
Yeah.
And okay, that's what you want, that's what you'll get. So,
von der Leyen is in Skopje, was in Skopje briefly today, and I was expecting that she will be like, you have to do this is your only ticket to the EU. She was actually pretty decent in her remarks. She did say, you have committed to the constitutional change, you should do it, but just in passing, and she was actually pretty positive. She says we'll be giving you gobs of money now with, there is some program for funding, I guess, infrastructure in Macedonia. So she was pretty, decent on in her remarks.
Interesting. Okay. Well, okay, good. I just saw a brief synopsis of what she said, and that she did say, you have to change your constitution. So, but maybe I'll dig a little deeper and see what else we can find out there.
I mean, it's mostly the mood for me, mostly the atmosphere surrounding the visit, and not what she said. I mean.
So okay, all right. Well, let's do this then. Let's transition to American elections. Again, Bulgarian elections are this weekend. American elections are. We always hold our elections on a Tuesday, unlike Europe. Although Macedonia this past spring, early summer, whenever it was, did the elections on a Wednesday.
Yeah.
I think it was. Yeah.
They should have done it Tuesday unusual. For America's sake.
So Tuesday, the 5th of November. Not to get all Guy Fawkes. Remember the 5th of November, the treason and gunpowder plot. So, elections. So for those that don't follow elections that are listening still, who have come to this part of the podcast and are still with us, thank you for sticking with us, all three of you. The American elections, so we vote, all 50 states, we do vote on a national basis for president, but we do not elect the president on a national basis, meaning if one candidate gets 75 million votes and another candidate gets 76 million votes in the popular vote, that doesn't mean that the candidate who got 76 million votes becomes the president. We have what's called the Electoral College, which some listeners may be familiar with, which our friends on the Democrat side really by and large want to get rid of. Because of the past several elections, the national vote has been won by the Democrat, and well, at least in 2016 and in 2000 and George Bush, both, if not both of his, the Democrats won the national vote, but the Republican was elected president. So 50 states, basically it comes down to seven swing states. They are Nevada, Arizona, where I sit, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan. Those are the 7 swing states where the presidency of the United States will be decided by a few tens of thousands, maybe a few thousands of votes sprinkled throughout each of the states. They're called swing states. They, Arizona has not always been a swing state. It's been reliably red until the last round of elections in 2020 when Biden won by 10,000 votes.
Won in with quotation marks.
Right. But if you look at the polls right now, I mean, they're just as close can be. I did read an interesting article yesterday quoting Nate Silver, who's a well-known, respected pollster. Personally, he leans left, but his models are close. The problem has been for all pollsters since Donald Trump came down the escalator in 2015. The problem for all pollsters is that people are fickle in terms of what they're willing to say to the pollster. That's number one. Number two, I heard a statistic yesterday, which I thought was fascinating, that it takes 50 phone calls to get somebody to pick up the phone and talk to a pollster. How do you poll when it's taking 50 people to get through and talk to somebody?
You can hire guys in Macedonia to do the cold calls.
Exactly. So the pollsters are having a hard time with all this. That's a given. But it's going to come down to those 7 states, to a few tens of thousands of votes in each of those states, who will then determine which way those states go in terms of the Electoral College. So that's kind of where we are, 12 days out from the elections. It looks like the Harris team has resorted to their old and tired accusation that Trump is Hitler. And, Reagan was Hitler, Bush was Hitler, McCain was Hitler, Romney was Hitler, Trump is Hitler. Hitler was Hitler. It's just kind of, he's a fascist, etc. No, and no. And, another pundit I was listening to the other day, he cannot be a fascist. Fascists don't have a sense of self-deprecating humor. Donald Trump, for all of his faults, has a very good sense of self-deprecating humor. I mean, here he donned McDonald's apron and is handing out fries at McDonald's. I mean, I don't see Benito Mussolini or Adolf Hitler or Xi Jinping, doing that. Trump's favorite line from his first presidency, but that means there's going to be a second one. My favorite line is, he says, "Can you imagine what I'd be like if I drank?" And Trump does not drink and he does not smoke. And he's 78 years old. He's overweight because he eats too much junk food, but he's got good Scottish genes. But he can engage in self-deprecating humor. He is a showman. He knows he's got that sense of timing. Because the other accusation that Harris and the Democrats are throwing against Trump is that he he's senile. He's 78 years old. He's now the oldest guy in the race. Now that they got rid of Biden. So they're trying to paint him as old and senile and feeble, but he's got that sense of timing and the ability to deliver a line, and that comes from his years of being in the spotlight, his years of being in TV, etc. And somebody who's senile doesn't have that ability.
Yeah, and he was president for 4 years, and not only that he was not a fascist, he actually, one can argue he didn't rule even at the basic minimum of his competence with all his advisors.
Right.
Undermining him, the State Department undermining him, and then all of his advisors. Now that's very interesting. They say no person has had so many top cabinet members and top officials denounce him now, even as a fascist or as a threat to democracy. But then no president. I mean, you have to go to Macedonia and to the period of Nikola Gruevski to have so many top officials of the government put in prison, charged with stupid cases, made up stuff, starting with Manafort and ending now with Bannon. I mean, I was watching once during the convention in, where was it, in Milwaukee, and they were literally, I think, having Peter Navarro discussing his stint in prison, and then Bannon's daughter walks by in the background, and she comes over, and they're exchanging prison tips. This is the extent to which Trump's people were arrested and charged and persecuted, and then all those who weren't are writing books saying that he's Hitler and a threat to democracy, even though arresting the entire cabinet of the leader of the opposition, former president, leader of the opposition, is definition of autocracy at the very least. So I'm, hoping he wins and that he actually gets to govern this time, and that he's more serious, and that the people around him are more serious about actually running the place. Right.
Well, we will see here. Again, as I said, you look at the polls and they're all over the place. Nate Silver. I've lost my train of thought here. Nate Silver has said the pollster. He said his gut feeling is that Trump is going to win. So it's, if you look at the polls, remember, I guess the point is for our audience is that if you look at the polls, don't look at the national poll. Look at the 7 states, and it's harder to do. There's not as much polling in each of the states, although the closer we get, the more there is. So those are the polls to look at, and the thing to remember is that Trump is, when pollsters do finally actually get to talk to somebody after 50 phone calls to talk to one person, Trump voters may be reluctant to actually tell the truth of what they believe. So,
who could blame them? I mean, at the very least, you can get the IRS on your back, and
exactly.
Very realistically, the FBI, because like in the UK, they're arresting people for protesting. In the US, you have thousands of protests. It's not just like the top government officials who are being persecuted. It's just like in Macedonia, the common protesters from the Capitol Hill riots. So, it's pretty ugly. I mean, I have to say, even as an Eastern European, I'm concerned for the state of your democracy.
You should be. I mean, look, if or maybe when the United States finally implodes, everybody comes down with us. So
I know.
It's just kind of the way it works. So. Anyway, on that happy note,
the nuclear exchange we have to look forward to.
Yeah, on that happy note, we can probably wrap it up here. I don't know if we'll talk before the U.S. elections. We'll see, but definitely we'll do a podcast shortly after. Guys, last point on the U.S. elections is that November 5, we won't know that night who won. Probably.
That's also a very interesting thing that makes me concerned for your democracy. We know within an hour and a half of the ballot points closing.
Yeah, and that's due. The 50 states have their own way of counting votes, etc. So anyway, that's a whole other subject. But well, hopefully we'll know by Wednesday the 6th or Thursday the 7th. I think last in 2020 it was like Friday of that week. So, but we'll know soon enough.
Whether
We'll do a
Trump won
podcast.
beyond the margin of fraud.
Yeah, we'll know shortly after that. We'll do a podcast and kind of parse through the results, and who knows what's going to happen in Macedonia in the meantime. We'll also have the Bulgarian elections, I guess, to talk about as well. So,
Yep. Everything is coming down at the same time.
exactly. So, all right. Hey, great catching up with you, and look forward to talking to you again in the next couple of weeks.
Sure, you too, buddy. Take care.
You take care.